Hello interwebs and welcome to my channel. So if I've scheduled things properly, which, knowing me, probably did not, but if I scheduled things properly, this is most likely going to be my last video of 2020, unless something big happens that I need to address. And, as this is the last video, I wanted to take some time and do something kind of a little bit lower key, considering this month I've done so many other big videos and big things. I wanted to do something kind of small and kind of focus in on the positives that have happened this year. As all of us don't need any reminder about, this year has been incredibly, incredibly rough for all of us. There's been the global pandemic, there's been the elections in the United States, there's been so much else. For me personally, I lost two of my grandparents this year, one of them to the pandemic, so it was particularly rough, especially these last few weeks in which those events happened. So with all that being taken into account, I thought, it'd be easy for all of us to forget the good that happened in 2020. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to erase the bad. And in many ways, the bad definitely outweighed the good. But I don't think things cancel each other out that easily. Life is messy that way. And so I figured it would be a good thing for me to just take a moment and remind myself and then share with all of you the things that really meant a lot to me this year. And so this list is going to be my top 10 favorite things this year. And this list is going to be wide-ranging. It's not just movies and TV shows. It's going to be life events as well. So it's going to be on a range of things. And it's all just personal to me. But I share them, as always on this channel, in an effort and hope that me sharing my personal life and my personal feelings and stories will, number one, make you feel better and share a little bit of positivity, but also help us all connect and hopefully I can remind you of the positives that happened in your life, even if you went through hardships like myself or even worse hardships, because heaven knows I am definitely very privileged. As hard as it's been for me, I know it has been much harder for so many other people. So I hope that this video can be a bright spot without necessarily erasing your hardships or not acknowledging your hardships, but just a reminder to say, hey, there's also been some good as well, or at least I can share some good with you and bring you some positivity to your life in whatever way I can. Some of these things are going to be incredibly weird and frivolous. Some of them are going to be incredibly important, but they're all stuff that I share with you. So at the bottom of this list is Parasite winning the Oscar for Best Picture. I know I told you some of these are going to be weird and kind of frivolous and not necessarily personal, but I was so excited to see Parasite by Bong Joon-ho win the Best Picture Oscar this year. I know, it seems weird that the Oscars even happened this year. That seems like a lifetime ago. But many of you who may have just recently joined the channel may not know this, but I am a huge film buff. I am the person who watches every single Oscar movie before the Oscars even happen. I watch over 300 movies a year. Yes, I do that. So I love movies, even though I don't talk about all of them on this channel because I'm tired and I don't always have the time to talk about that many films. And to be honest with you, the Oscars are basically my Super Bowl. Rarely does the movie that I think is the best movie of the year win Best Picture, let alone even gets nominated. Most of the time, the movie that I think is the best movie of the year doesn't even get nominated for an Oscar because it really all just is politics. But I really love moments where movies that I truly love and think really deserve it actually get that recognition. And this is only the second time that my actual favorite movie of the year actually won Best Picture. Parasite was the winner this year, and then the last time my favorite Best Picture one was The Shape of Water by Guillermo del Toro, I think 2 or 3 years ago. So trending upwards, but then we had that little Green Book aberration there, which was, that was a whole thing. But it was really just so exciting to see a movie that actually said something, was incredibly impactful, was, showing diversity in the Oscar choices. It wasn't just another big Hollywood aiming for the blockbuster winner. It was a true a unique choice for the Oscars and really brought light to a film that really deserved to be seen. I don't think that if Parasite had won that Oscar, it would have been given as much attention as it has been. Like even my family, who rarely watches any foreign films, actually saw Parasite because it won the Oscar and gave it a chance. And I think that movie really has something to say. And if you have not watched Parasite, go out and watch it now because it is a truly wonderful film. The next thing on my list is my time with my parents in Taos. Many of you know, earlier on in this pandemic, I left Los Angeles and spent 2 months living with my parents in Taos, New Mexico, where they own a bed and breakfast. And again, I'm super privileged that I have a family that owns a bed and breakfast, and I was able to sort of, quarantine there for 2 months at the start of this pandemic. So I totally know and acknowledge my privilege in that. But I will say, within that acknowledgement, it was a really kind of wonderful time for me to have those 2 months. Number one, I hated Los Angeles, and to get out of LA, and I'll talk about this later, but to get out of LA for 2 months really was a big head change for me. And it came right off of me losing my job early on in the pandemic. So it was nice to sort of get out of there and sort of refresh and reset. But the other thing that I realized too is my parents are divorced. They divorced before I can even remember them being together. So ever since I was a kid, I would always have to go between my dad and my mom. I would spend, the weekdays with my mom and weekends with my dad. And, summers I would often go and work at a Boy Scout camp. So I didn't really get to spend much prolonged time with them outside of the school year. And I had the realization during that 2-month time period that I was in Taos that was the longest that I had spent with my dad and my stepmother at once. One long unstretched time. I had never spent more than, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 at the offset, but I would be surprised at that. But I don't think I've ever spent longer than 2 weeks staying in one place with just my dad and my stepmom. And it was honestly really nice. It was nice to have that time to connect with them and get to know them a little bit better. Not that I hadn't gotten to know them, but, between being an adult and not getting to spend as much time with them, and the fact that I never got to be consecutively with them as a kid, it was just nice. And it was also nice to just be in Taos and get out of LA. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. The third thing on my list that I wish to acknowledge is television sitcoms. I really, really appreciated television sitcoms and comedies this year. The 30-minute comedy show on TV. There were so many that I really loved, and they honestly carried me throughout this pandemic. I love a good drama show. I love watching good drama shows, but TV comedies are what I needed during the hell that has been 2020. I specifically want to call out Upload, which was fantastic, and I got recommended to me by the wonderful Nader Tot, who is another YouTuber and lovely, lovely person who I highly recommend you watch his content. But I watched Upload on his recommendation. What We Do in the Shadows, which is based on my favorite movie of all time, but that show is absolutely phenomenal, and Mark Hamill's cameo in this season was hysterical. Mythic Quest Raven's Banquet is a hilarious look inside the video game industry and what it's like to work inside the video game industry. And also their pandemic special that they did was a true treat. BoJack Horseman's final half of its final season was absolutely wonderful. That show is a true masterpiece and masterstroke of art that I highly recommend everyone watch. And it was great to see it go out on a high note. I really, really thought it ended very, very strongly and right where it should, leaving people wanting more and saying really important things about the film industry and about how we view masculinity in general. And finally, The Good Place. The Good Place was my heartwarming show. Again, that's a show you forget that actually finished up its final season in 2020 because that seems like forever ago. But it actually did, and the finale of Good Place is one of those few finales of shows that really made me just bawl. There are a few shows that really just make me bawl. The Lost season finale, I know that would be a controversial choice, but the Lost series finale also did that for me as well. And the Enterprise series finale as well, but that was mostly because Star Trek was going away, not because of that particular episode. But The Good Place was another true masterpiece, and I was sad to see it go, but again, it left right at the right moment and truly moved me, and I think that show speaks to everything about who I am as a person. That show was basically made for me. It was all about ethics and philosophy and morality, but also was very funny and irreverent and science fiction-y and took its premise very weirdly and took it to new places. That show was everything that I wanted out of a TV show, and I absolutely adored it. Speaking of comedies, though, the next thing on my list is Star Trek Lower Decks. I adored Star Trek Lower Decks so much. It was a true blessing and treat to get that show, especially this year. Don't get me wrong, I loved getting Picard. I loved getting Star Trek Discovery Season 3. I'm always going to love the big premiere Star Trek shows, the sort of big things that are moving Star Trek forward in new and interesting ways. And Lower Decks, for its own thing, did move Star Trek forward in new and interesting ways, but it was this wonderful, wonderful mix of, again, that comedy, that irreverence that I really love in my shows. I love shows that are kind of a little bit irreverent with their source material and what they're dealing with. But even beyond that, it was such a love letter to Star Trek. It felt very familiar and made me feel comfortable, like I was wearing a nice little blanket and sort of returning home. And yet it pushed things in a new way and just found its footing and voice so quickly and did new wonderful things. And it was truly a love letter to Star Trek, but it also gave Star Trek to a new generation, no pun intended. And I absolutely adored the work that Mike McMahon and his entire team did. Lower Decks was a true treat, and that's not say anything against Picard or Discovery, but just to say that it was a true joy this year to get Lower Decks. The very next thing on my list is another personal thing, and that is the fact that I got to move to Seattle this year. Again, as many of you know, earlier on in the pandemic, I lost my job. I was able to focus on doing this YouTube channel full-time, which was, again, a true blessing and something I really, really love. But then just a few months ago, I was offered a position at the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle. It's a really cool museum that does really, really cool stuff, both in community and dealing with pop culture and trying to teach and educate and use pop culture as a way to talk about even larger issues, which is everything that I'm about. That's what this channel is about. So to get the chance to have that job, especially during the pandemic, was a true joy, and only possible because of this channel. Like, one of the reasons I was hired was because of the work that I did on this channel, and this channel only got noticed because of all of you, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the very fact that I was able to take the risk to come to the Museum of Pop Culture, because still at this moment, as of this filming, I'm still technically not a full-time employee there because of the pandemic, because of the way things are going on right now. They're a little bit reticent to hire me full-time, which is scary and terrifying, and I would not have done it normally, but because I have this YouTube channel and I have this base to draw from, and know that if this job goes away, I still have something that, you know, helps me financially, but also fulfills me in terms of professional life as well. It allowed me to take that chance, and it's been stressful and hard these past few weeks, but I've also really loved it and found a lot of joy in it. So thank you for that, and also just the bigger fact of getting able to move to Seattle. I hated Los Angeles. Los Angeles was a drain on my mental health, and that's what I was living before this. And as much as I loved the people that were there, a lot of the people that I loved left Los Angeles during the pandemic for good, and it never really felt like home ever. Seattle felt like that and feels like that. And so there are a lot of struggles still ahead, a lot of things that I still need to do personally, but and once the pandemic's through, but being here just feels like I'm able to build a home. And that feels really beautiful and wonderful. And I'm so thankful for that chance to come back in 2020. The next thing on my list is another one of those frivolous things that just brought me a smile, and that is the preeminence and growing popularity of Harley Quinn, namely with the Birds of Prey movie and the Harley Quinn the Animated Series. For many of you that know me, just have followed me throughout the year or so, I am a huge Harley Quinn fan, even though I haven't done many videos on her. She is someone who speaks to me about a character who is, again, that funny, irreverent type character, but also is someone who showcases that we can overcome trauma, we can get past abuse, and sort of grow into our own full person beyond that. And that just speaks to me on many levels, personally, and for people that I care about as well. And so I've always loved Harley. Harley has been one of my favorite characters. There's a reason you can't really see her here, but she's hiding over there on that shelf there. And so she means a lot to me. And I was always saddened by the fact that she was very discounted and treated like a prop in the Suicide Squad movie. And that was sort of the version of Harley Quinn that most people got to know. But this year, between Birds of Prey being one of my favorite movies of the year, yes, I will 100% confirm that it is my top 10 of the year. I adore Birds of Prey. I think it is a fantastic film. I did a whole video on it if you want to hear my thoughts on it and why I absolutely love the movie. But also Harley Quinn the Animated Series is a top-notch show. It is far from perfect, but again, goes into that comedy, getting me through the hard times sort of thing. I just loved Harley Quinn, and the fact that it was showing all sides of Harley that didn't get to necessarily have popular awareness, like the fact that she is bisexual, which I am as well, and she's dating Harley Quinn in that, or Poison Ivy in that show. So I just absolutely love the fact that Harley Quinn got her due this year, both on the TV and the big screen as well. So very happy for that. The next thing on my list is another very personal thing, and that is the fact that I finally got breast augmentation here. Like the Harley Quinn, I did a whole video on this and why getting breast augmentation meant a lot to me as a trans person. Showcase the boobs. Look at them. They're here. They're nice and big. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to look. I want you to look. Believe me, I really do. Now that I've made things awkward, I've talked about in a video about why getting breast augmentation was important to me. So I'll sort of keep things brief here so this video doesn't go over long. But getting breast augmentation was something that I have looked forward to my entire life. Something that I dreamed about since I was a little kid. Ever since I was jealous watching the other girls in my class and my age go through their form of puberty, and I had to go through the hell that was my own puberty that just turned my body into a thing that I was disgusted by. And getting to have breasts and getting to look down and say like, hey, these are mine, and getting to see my body more match what makes me feel happy and comfortable it makes every day a blessing. And I know that seems weird to talk about like just boobs. I mean, they're funny, weird things, you know, whatever, I play with them. They're fun. We all know it. We all like to play with boobs. We get it, unless you don't like boobs, which is totally fine, but, you know, I do. So it meant a lot to me. It really, really meant a lot to me to get this. And I still have FFS that I want to get, and hopefully we'll get next year. It was sort of delayed and pushed because of the pandemic. I do still want that, and that is sort of the last major part of my transition that I do eventually want to get. But getting breast augmentation meant a lot to me. And the very fact that I was able to do it because of all of you, by the way, that also happened because of you. I was scammed out of $5,000 earlier this year. Gosh, a lot happened to me this year. Jesus, I forget that. But I was scammed out of $5,000 this year, and I almost canceled the surgery because I couldn't pay for it. And all of you out there donated to my Patreon or to my GoFundMe. I cannot tell you that, you know, I could tell you the amount of money that you gave me, but I cannot tell you what that money gave to me in my spirit and my soul. It is immeasurable. So thank you so much to all of you for that. The next thing on my list is the fact that transgender representation continued to increase this year. Yes, there was a lot of hardships for trans people, especially in the United Kingdom surrounding J.K. Rowling, and a lot of like rulings in the United Kingdom around trans issues, and in the United States as well. There were definitely a lot of hardships that the transgender community faced, and I definitely don't mean to diminish that in any way, shape, or form. But one thing that did hearten me about the transgender community and for the transgender community this year was the fact that we got to see so many more representations of trans people start appearing in the media. The ones that immediately come to mind are in video games with Tell Me Why, which I reviewed on this channel and absolutely adored. Was one of my favorite video games of the year. I adore Tell Me Why. Also, The Last of Us Part 2 with the character of Lev, played by Ian Alexander. But speaking on Ian Alexander, they also appeared alongside Blue Del Barrio in the latest season of Star Trek Discovery, finally bringing what I've always wanted my entire life, which is to see transgender people in my favorite show and franchise. And again, that is immeasurable. I cried the first scene I saw those characters in. It means something. It means something to me, and I can't tell you, I can't even imagine what it must mean for kids who are just discovering Star Trek at the same age that I did when I was younger. You know, I was 10 or 11 years old when I found Star Trek, and there are 10 and 11-year-olds finding Star Trek now who are trans like I was, and now get to see themselves there in a way that I didn't. And that is so meaningful and so beautiful. And also the very fact that all the examples that I listed are all of trans masculine characters as well, or non-binary characters. An often even underrepresented group within the trans community, which is itself underrepresented. I am on the more feminine side of the transgender community, for sure, even though I tend to identify a little bit non-binary as well. But, you know, trans women and trans feminine folks have been overrepresented even within the little representation that trans people get. So it's so nice to see trans masculine representations definitely getting up there as well. And that is in no small part to people like Ian Alexander, who I had the wonderful joy to interview on this channel as well. So it's really beautiful to see trans folks getting more representation, not just for myself, but for kids who are trans, who finally will be able to get to see themselves in a way that they never had before, and in a medium like video games that they never thought they would see themselves before in. I think that is truly priceless. And really briefly, I'm just going to pause this list right here because I've already filmed this next part, and I filmed this whole next part and didn't realize that my mic had somehow turned off. And to be honest with you, this next part is really meaningful, and I tried it. I really came from the heart, and I when I realized that the mic had turned off, I was like, crap, maybe I can refilm it. And I've tried like 4 or 5 times now to refilm what you're about to see, but I just couldn't recapture it because I really sort of laid it all out there in the video that you'll see in the next few seconds. So I do apologize that the sound for this final part is bad. It's not as good as it has been earlier in this video, but I felt to try to recreate it and re-say it would have felt dishonest. And I really wanted this video to be very honest. So I apologize that the sound over the next couple minutes is going to be bad, but just know that it is because I wanted to share my honest feelings and didn't want to have to re-say it or recreate it. So just know the next few minutes are very sincere if the audio is terrible. All right, these last 2 things on my list are kind of tied together, but the first one of the last 2 is the fact that my YouTube channel grew this year, and the fact that I got to meet and get to know so many new creators and people. At the start of this year, I was under 10K. on this YouTube channel. And now, at least at the time of this recording, I'm about to hit 30K. I might have even hit it by the time this video goes up, which is insane. It is so insane to have seen this channel take off. You know, I'm not by any means like the biggest YouTuber of all time, but to know the fact that the stuff that I'm creating resonates and means something to people. I get so many messages from people that say that my content matters to them and it taught them something, or got them to be able to see themselves in things like Star Trek or their favorite fandoms that they didn't get to see themselves in. And I don't say that to boost my own ego. Just it just surprises me and honors me that the stuff floating around in my brain pan means something to people. I put a lot of hard work into it, but I do it because I love it, and I'm just shocked that it matters. I honestly am. Again, I don't say that for my own ego or to fake that for you. I truly, I don't get it. I really don't. But I'm appreciative of it, and you know, I'm going to talk about this. I'm gonna set that aside for a second, because the other part of this that I want to quick mention before I finish out this video and talk about that part a little bit more is, because of all this, I've had so many opportunities this year to not only talk with Ian Alexander, to not only get the full-time job that I now have, but to get to meet really wonderful people and other creators out there. I now personally call Council of Geeks a friend. We do a podcast together every week and talk regularly. There's so many other creators like Ketwalski, Steve Shives. All these people are people that I now have connections with and can talk to. Some of them I can even consider friends, which is insane. And I would not have had those chances, gotten to meet those people without this channel, and without all of you, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it's again shocking and humbling and honoring to see people who I looked up to for a long time and still look up to want to work with me. I want to do things with me. You know, I used to watch Council of Geeks and Steve Shives regularly, and now I have direct connections to them and talk to them regularly. And done videos and work with them. That's blows my mind. It really does blow my mind. And that brings me to my final thing, though. The thing that blows my mind the most, and I've kind of skirted it here the past couple minutes, but is all of you. And like I said, I get so many messages about the very fact that this channel means something to all of you, that the stuff I create is meaningful to you, but I don't want to deny the fact that all of you mean a lot to me. For many years, I didn't believe that my voice mattered. Because of trans issues, because I didn't believe that I was in a body that I liked, and so I hated myself, and that sort of connected with my voice and felt like I wasn't someone who had anything worth saying. And I just created this channel to just, you know, build out a place where I could just shoot stuff into the dark and do it for myself, you know, just to try and gain confidence in my voice, of just being able to create. You know, the more you create, the more you gain confidence in yourself. So I just did this for my own self, and the very fact that this started to take off, and that I saw this community grow in such a beautiful, beautiful way. There are so many of you out there that I see in all the live streams, in the comments, on my Patreon, on Twitter, all those places, who repeatedly come back and are just beautiful, kind, thoughtful, caring people. I am honored and humbled by all of you. The very fact that you are part of my community. I shouldn't even say my community. It's the community that this channel is built around, but it is not mine. You helped build it, all of you. And I hope that as this channel continues to grow, and that I maybe get to do this full time one day, because that is still the goal and something that I really want to focus on next year, and I'll talk about that next year, and what that means and what my goal is. But that is the goal for me, is to do this full time. But I only want to do that if it feels like something that is making a positive difference in the world. And the way I can tell that it is doing that is because of the beautiful people that help make up this community. And the very fact that you help support me financially, emotionally, creatively, as a community, again, humbles and honors me. So that is my number one thing this year. Thank you to all of you for everything, and for being a true bright spot in a very, very difficult year. So thank you for allowing me this incredibly indulgent video where I talked about my personal life and random stuff that I enjoyed this year. Like I said, it's been a hard year, and I don't want to deny that. I don't want to put it down or forget about that, because it is true, and we've all lost people, and things have been rough. But there has been good things that happened too. And I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. So thank you, everybody. You are truly beautiful and truly amazing. And I'm going to stop complimenting you. But thank you. Just thank you. And I think I'll end it there. So I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. And I will see you in 2021. Hopefully, there'll be even more brighter things and less terrible things in 2021. Thank you to all of my patrons this month, but especially Amanda Ronye Idanya, Catherine Lambeth, Ashley Ellen Bokikio, Miranda Janelle, Eli Bergmoss, Ashlyn Solstice, Michael D., Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Ulysses the Pagan, Randy Thompson, Munir Amlani, Chamomile T., Stephen Schuhart, Wellington Marcus, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Wayne Twitchell, Ish the Mad, Buttoneer, Roar, Christina Dalliance, Dominic Noble, John Steele, Michael Beam. She sells seashells by the seashore of Bajor. William Stewart, Gavin Robinson, The Sir Spence, BBD, Hannah F., Nathan Olson, Jason Knott, Andrew Jorgensen, Chris Brown, Jasmine, Maeve, Bree Beecher, Sabraxis, Skylar Gray, Nathan Steele, Jane Packard and Chloe Dollar, Wen Dizzle-Bizzle, Gretchen Badger, Geek Filter, Bush, Celestial Dawn, Din, Sarah Bastam, Polly Mina, Jacob Tovar, Piston Twisted Garage, Lily, Jean Mithun, Andrew Lamori, Lysa, Zone 1 Librarian, Michael Hardy, Corey Honkanen, and KT Dunn. Thank you so much to all of you. You're quite literally making my dreams come true, so I cannot tell you how thankful I am.